Welcome back then folks to the last day already of Special Projects number 11. This is of course build number 9 out of this pack, and it's for a car which won't necessarily excite people as much as something like a supercar or a super obscure race car or a classic replica of some kind, but it's just one of those smaller like cup car or touring car style builds that I occasionally like to throw in, this time of course for the Abarth 695 Assetto Corse. The replica livery is of a real machine. I seem to recall it was a race winner, if I recall correctly. I'm not too versed on this kind of competition, but we're running as close to the real-world specs as you could realistically get. And as it turns out, this thing is kind of a bit of a little beast around the track. The Abarth is a good car. Of course, I've reviewed one of these in Beards and Cars in real life, and it was a lot of fun to drive. I can see why people like them so much. You put 200 horsepower in this thing, it's going to fly. Now, as far as the build itself, you want your sports pads. We've got stage 1 weight. As far as the tyres, I've upgraded it from comfort softs to sports hards. You could say, well, it's a race car, why not go for racing tyres? I know sometimes I do. On this occasion, I wanted to see if we could keep the points a bit lower. As you can see, it certainly is. It's below 500, which is not bad at all for those kind of specs. And also, I didn't want it to be too OP. So if you want to put it on race tyres, go for it. But of course, you will restrict yourself in terms of how many events you can actually use it for, potentially. You've got the bored-out engine, and, you know, some of this will not be accurate to real life, so you do have to overlook some of that sometimes, just to get the right numbers in terms of, like, horsepower, torque, weight, that kind of stuff. So, as far as the weight reduction, stage 2 there, power restrictor and ballast are fitted as well. As far as the semi-racing stuff, we've got the fully customised ECU, the racing crank, the semi-race clutch and flywheel, the diff, the fully customised manual box. I haven't gone for the stage 3 weight, because of course you don't necessarily need to, in terms of achieving the real life weight of the car. I've got anti-lag purchased, but I don't actually have it turned on. So I'll leave that down to you, if you want to have it turned on or not. We've got the polished ports, the balance tuning, the intercooler, filter, silencer, and manifold. As far as the brakes, we've got the drilled discs, but as you can see, I've kept the sports pads instead of full-on racing ones. Again, you could argue that might be a bit of overkill, but we're mixing and matching it a bit here, having a bit of a pick and mix. We've got the race suspension also. Like I said, haven't bothered with the racing tyres on this one. As far as the extreme stuff, we've got the steering angle adapter. It's already a very small, super manoeuvrable car, but even more so now with that one. And for the ultimate stuff, the titanium rods and pistons, which I'm almost certain is wild overkill compared to the real car. But again, we needed to get it up around the real world specs, which is 940 kilos and about 200 horsepower. So we're running just a little bit higher at 202, but as I've said before with other builds, at a certain point, when it comes down to the OCD aspect of getting exactly the right numbers, you do have to decide how far do you really want to go in terms of fitting stuff just to then restrict it to get it down to, you know, the exact right amount. So on this occasion, I've decided to let it slide, just allow it that extra 2 horsepower for the sake of losing a touch of realism. So we've got the sports hards fitted. As far as the suspension, 130mm, which sounds pretty high, but as you can see, it definitely isn't on this car. It's pretty low. We've got 4 on anti-roll, 30 and 40 for the dampers, 2.5 for the springs, little bit of camber, 1 on the front, half on the rear. As far as toe, nothing on the back, and a little bit in on the front, 0.5. As far as the diff, I've opted for 10, 30 and 20. Everyone has their own preference for the diff, especially on front-wheel drive, so if you want to go for something else, or if, for example, you already know something else works better for you, absolutely go for it. Pretty close ratio box, 230 kilometers an hour, which is, what, that's got to be up around, I think, 135, 140 maybe miles an hour, something like that. As far as the ballast, you want 50 kilos to bring us up to that 940 kilo curb weight. I've put that all the way to the back. It's still very much a front-loaded car, so you don't necessarily need to do that. That's, again, up to you. As far as downforce, I'm running the full amount. Wild overkill for something like a cup car, but again, I wanted it to just be a grip monster through the corners. Like I said, anti-lag is not turned on, and for all the other stuff, you can see it all down here in terms of what we've fitted. So pretty simple. You know, with a cup car, you kind of know what you're getting into. Drop the weight, little bit of extra power, maybe some decent tyres and brakes. So all that remains naturally is to, as we always do, jump out to the track. On this occasion, Brands Hatch to show you what the car can do in practice. Now, for a lot of people, I'm sure you have less interest in stuff like these super mini, you know, race cars, cup cars, the Super Taiku cars that I did a trio of, and that's fair enough. It's just that with these packs, I like to try and cover the bases for a lot of different styles of driver. So some JDM stuff, some concepts, some supercars, some classics, some little hot hatches or cup cars, and this is just one of those. So I always used to love driving stuff like the Lupo Cup car, the Micro Cup car, of course the Beetle RSI, and this is in that kind of spirit. Plus, if you've got an Abarth and you're not really doing anything with it, why not turn it into a special project? It's at least more fun than having it sitting in the garage gathering dust. So if you do decide to use it, it's a lot of fun to drive. It's very easy to drive as well. And to be honest, the only downside to this car, and I know this annoys many of you, it definitely annoys me, is the chase cam. It is stupidly close on this car, and many other small cars it's just so close up behind the back of the car that you can barely see past it, which is really annoying, to be honest. It's even more annoying on the Samba bus. You have to basically use bonnet cam or cockpit cam to see where you're going properly. So that's my only nitpick with the car. In terms of driving it though, it's super fun. So if you do decide to use it, I hope you have a ton of fun with it. And of course, there's only one build left. And for those of you who have been following along, of course you know what it is. We are finishing off pack number 11 with the Corvette ZRX. So stick around for that later on today. Check out the others from earlier in the week if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. But for now, thanks for watching.